How are you? I'm Mary Dixon. Thank you. I'm your morning edition host on 91.5 WBEZ. I hope you're all getting by with the time change because we are in for a really wonderful evening. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's program with Jeff Tweedy and Peter Segal. We can do this because people just like you who are members of WBEZ give. We can provide fair and uncompromised news from around the world and offer local, independent journalism because of community funding from folks like you. So if you're one of those folks who has been listening to the radio, listening to our podcast, reading our newsletters, coming to events like this, if you haven't already, please consider going to wbez.org/donate and support WBEZ. And thank you. We have a few more cool events I just want to remind you about. 2 nights of the Moth main stage on November 16th and 17th. Next month, we're hosting an event with the best-selling author Michael Lewis in conversation with New York Times financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin. And you can buy tickets and learn more about these programs at wbez.org/events. Now, the reason that we are all here tonight. Jeff Tweedy's latest book, World Within a Song, is an intimate case study into the mind of Jeff Tweedy, and also into a lot of the music that a lot of us have been listening to for decades. What makes us fall in love with the song? What makes us want to write our own songs? Do songs help us to live a better life? Do the lives we live help us to write better songs? These are some of the questions we hope to answer tonight as we celebrate the release of World Within a Song. You all should have your copy now. If you weren't able to pick it up on the way in, you can pick it up on the way out tonight, so don't worry. It officially comes out on Tuesday, but this is our hometown sneak peek. Yes. So special thanks to our bookseller, Exile in Bookville, and and the folks at the Athenaeum Theater. Now, please give a warm welcome, a hometown welcome, to Chicago's own Peter Segal and Jeff Tweedy.
Well, that got off to a really great start. Hi, welcome to an evening with Jeff Tweedy, or all titled Two Gen Xers bullshitting about the music they listened to when they were kids. So hi, I'm Peter Segal. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here with Mr. Tweedy. Let me just tell you how the evening's going to roll. I get to talk to him because I'm on stage and you're not for about a half an hour or so. Then we've got some questions from you all that were pre-submitted and selected, so no raising your hands, it's too late. And then, and this is why, well, I don't know if it's why you're here, but it's an extra bonus for coming, Jeff is going to play some of the music that some of the people who submitted questions indicated that were very important to them in the way that the songs in this book are very important to Jeff. So, let's start there. This book, The World Within a Song. So you've written a memoir, sort of. You've written a book about music, sort of. This is sort of a memoir in music. Right. So tell me the pitch. You're selling it to the publisher.
Well, I think it started out as, I was asked to write a book, a memoir, and I thought that I was too young to write a memoir, but I got talked into it. And I enjoyed writing about the music the most when I wrote the memoir, and creativity. And so that led to the next book, because I thought that was the thing I liked writing about the most. So I wrote How to Write One Song and explored the process of creativity a little bit more and advocated for it as a good way to live. And then it didn't come to me until after that book was finished that the thing I actually really like writing about the most or thinking about the most is other people's songs. And the way I see myself probably is more rooted in other people's music than one would believe, considering how much music I've put out into the world. You know, I don't think of myself as my own songs. I think of myself more as the songs that have made me.
Right, and which is one of the fascinating things about reading this book, and I'm skipping ahead on my own list a little bit, is when I read a memoir or a book like this by, well, a rock star, I just... And I know there are people incredibly upset with me right now that that's the genre I used. I'm sorry. I just would assume that people like you have a very different relationship to music than, you know, civilians like me, but that's not true. That the way that you write about the songs, and because we're similar ages, some of the same songs, were really similar. You were out there, you were a kid, you were hearing these songs, they meant certain things to you at a certain time. Let's start here. What was the criteria of inclusion in this book? It's got 50 chapters, 50 songs. What was the criteria?
To be honestly, I just started writing. I just started thinking of songs. I tried to just do it intuitively at first. I thought of songs that I have stories about, that I felt like I could relate some memory that wouldn't make any sense without the song being the catalyst for it. The way I think that's another part of what I wanted to write about in the book was how efficient songs are at containing our memories and enhancing our own experiences. You know, we don't walk down the street and start humming the Mona Lisa. It's an art form that is really, really designed, I think, to help us remember things and to make our memories more vivid. There's senses that come back from listening to a song that you haven't heard in 20 years are profound. And I wanted to write about that. So I started just trusting myself, just trying to think of songs that I know do that. And I really would, by the time I would finish one essay, I would have thought of another song, usually. So I just kept doing that until I had a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
and then I kind of weeded out and tried to get the best ones together, and I consulted a list of songs that or at least artists that I thought would be really silly to exclude, and I still excluded really egregious examples of things that should be obviously important to me, like Neil Young isn't in the book.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. I mean, was it like too obvious? Because, I mean, I've read, well, you know, your voice is often compared to Neil Young, and you're like, nope, I'm not going to go there.
No, it wasn't too obvious. It was just, I honestly just, maybe it was too obvious for me to think about, because I was racking my brain trying to think of the coolest and most interesting things I could write about. And there were some that I recognized later. I was like, oh my God, I've been trying to, you know, crane my neck and see the farthest star in the universe, and I've ignored what was like right under my feet. And that's why I wrote about the Minutemen. You know, that one was kind of like Neil Young too. It just, for a while, it just kind of simmered, not being acknowledged. And but yeah, Neil Young just slipped my mind. I'll write another book, maybe all Neil Young songs.
Oh, exactly. The world within Neil Young songs. The book also has these interludes, these anecdotes, these stories from your youth called rememories, which is a coinage of yours. It is. And are you implying that they're exactly accurate, that they're not? They're stories that you've told many times, and this is how you've told them?
Yeah, I think that calling it a memory would be a little too official. So yeah, I came up with the phrase rememories. And I started writing my most often told stories, like stories I've told my kids, stories I've told my friends. And there's an author named David Markson who I really love the way he writes. And to be honest, the initial impulse was to try and write down my own stories in this very efficient language that I feel like really resembles the way we think, as opposed to like a completely curated story where you try and color in every detail and you make it look like, I don't know, hyper real. I think the way he tells stories, there's a lot of negative space, but it's kind of more how I think our memory really works. So it's not concerned with being completely accurate, it's concerned with being emotionally accurate.
Right, right. You write about yourself as a child, and you describe yourself a couple of times, noting how young you were in this state as being alienated, which is an unusual word to use for, I think, at one point, an 8-year-old. What do you mean by that? What I guess what I'm asking is, what kind of child were you?
An alienated child.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, what is I mean, what's weird is, because again, I found some very striking similarities between you and myself. I would have described myself as sort of awkward and lonely as opposed to alienated. So how did it feel to be? I
mean, that's a part of it. Alienation maybe is a heavy word to apply to such a young person, but I mean, I feel like it's accurate. I hung out with adults. I hung out with my mom, and my socialization, by the time I was around other kids, it wasn't just awkward. I didn't like them, I guess. First of all, they didn't love me as much as my mom, which was a real red flag.
Did you tell them that?
I think I probably did.
You don't love me as much as my mom.
Yeah,
and they're going, Jeff,
so
that would be weird.
You can see how alienating that would be for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a moment, you seem fine now, when brief acquaintance, we met a couple times. Was there a moment, and maybe this is actually part of the story of the book, because so much of this book is about, and you write about this so well and originally in so many places, how the songs that you write about made you feel less alone.
Yeah. I mean, there was for a little background, I'm 10 years younger than my youngest sibling. I came around pretty late in the window of fertility for my mother. There's probably a more delicate way to say that, but my dad says that when my mom decided she wanted to have another kid, he was home before she hung up the phone from work.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But my mom says I was an accident. Yeah.
And your father says the fuck he was and opens another beer, right?
Yeah. No. So by the time I really have a lot of memories formed in my house, my brothers and my sister were gone. They had left the house for school, or they just left the house. And so as an only child, but also a baby, the baby of the family. So there was this companionship that my mother seemed to foster. Like, oh, good, now I have somebody to talk to. Not to say too much about her relationship with my father, but and then the other, but that still leaves a lot of loneliness. If I said I'm lonely, my mom would say, "Let me teach you how to play solitaire." Not like, "Hey, let's call some friends over."
Right.
Yeah.
She didn't say, "Let me teach you how to play gin rummy and we'll play together." No, it was just solitaire.
It's like I've got stuff to do.
Right. Yeah,
so.
you don't do this. Do you?
So records were my other friends.
Yeah,
like what I was getting at.
And one of the great things in the book is this box of records, which, by the way, I was reading through your entry on Wikipedia, which Wikipedia refers to as gramophone records.
Whoa.
Highlighted, so you can click to see what a gramophone is.
That's interesting.
I don't know why.
How
but
old did they think I am?
That's a good question. He put them on the Victrola and listened with his ear,
Hey,
listening to his
You gotta
master's
you
voice.
gotta
I
crank
don't
it.
know. I was surprised. But this box of records and a bunch of the early entries in your book are about those songs.
Yeah, just a wild collection of. The story is that my older brother had gone away to college, and it didn't go so well, so he came back. But when he came back, he had a giant crate of records. Might have even had 2 crates of records, but all of his records were given to me as a promise that I would not continue to fill out a Columbia Record Club form.
Like he thought that was...
No, I was at the kitchen table filling this out, 13 records for a penny.
And he put his hand on yours and he said,
And he
no,
said
Jeff, no.
No, he saw me like saying, checking the box that said Kansas.
Yeah.
And he said, not on my watch.
What did you find there in that box?
Well, that's just, I mean, it's still a mystery to me how all of these records even ended up in my brother's record crate. But it was Kraftwerk. It was, there were jazz records. There were, mostly it was wild college music before there was a name for like college rock,
Right.
you know. There were a lot of German bands, but like Kraftwerk, there was Amandul, there was Aphrodite's Child, a Greek psychedelic band. So it's just this,
I listened to that. That was truly trippy. That was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
By the way, a lot of the fun of this book, and I'm going to recommend it to you. Wait a minute, you already have
buy
a copy.
another
You paid
copy.
for it. You've got it. You need to buy copies for gifts. Is you will find out about some really cool music, and thanks to devices like this, you can hear it almost instantly, which is pretty cool. Anyway, you were saying, so there's a box.
yeah. So it's like there were also Dylan records in there. There were some things that I never really ended up liking. It's just a weird collection, and it was sort of the way a lot of our records in our house, other than this crate of records, seemed to be purchased with a budget in mind. So if there's a Dylan record, it's maybe one of the less popular Dylan records that might have been cut out and put into a bargain
Right.
bin at some point. You know.
Do we need to explain to you what a cutout is?
I think I did.
You do in the book,
I
yes.
do. Yeah.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that because, and this is the Gen X nostalgia part of the evening. One thing has changed immensely since you and I were kids, which is that if we wanted to hear music, if we had managed to hear it, maybe on the radio, it was hard, and the access to music was limited, but you had to go out and make a choice. You had to go down to the record store, which I remember being a place that sold musical instruments and records. This was before Tower Records and all those places. And you had to like say, no, I want to listen to that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to invest my money from my paper router allowance, whatever it was.
Right.
Do you think, let me put it this way, is it good that we don't have to do that, that they don't have to do that anymore, that the kids don't have to do that anymore? Or was there something about that that made you make decisions like your brother did about what the collection would be?
I'm always really careful not to sound like an old person when it comes to technology, because I think there's a tendency to be really doom and gloom about things, and I personally, the bottom line is I have a lot of faith in people's creativity, and I think that the way that kids these days are going to experience music, having access to so much, is going to result in different things and different relationships that aren't good or bad. I think it's the new art will come out of it, and it will be unpredictable in the same way it was for my generation. I think it still inspires people to make stuff, and that's the bottom line that I think is worthwhile. But yes, I do think it was better. I'll tell you why. I do think there was something really valuable in knowing that you invested something. You not only invested your money, but if it wasn't something that worked right away, you felt more compelled to give it another listen. You felt more compelled. Like, I think that now with access to so much, the initial response is if you don't like it,
Click.
you move on and you find something you like and something that hits you immediately. And we developed these friendships with these records because we had to give them a chance, just like we've had to give some of the people in our lives chances
Right.
to endear us.
Yeah.
You know?
And then you'd leave them out, your collection, where like people who came to your house could see them.
Not
and
me.
Not you? No?
No.
No.
They weren't allowed near my records.
Nobody was.
I honestly had a attic. Nobody wanted to come to my room. It was hot. It was very hot. It was an attic. It was an attic bedroom with only slatted windows and no air conditioning in the Mississippi River Valley, like Southern Illinois. So
I'm going to move on from your childhood in a second, but I promise, your mother comes across wonderfully in this book, both as a character and as someone who I understand your affection for and the importance of her in your life. Your father, not so much, put it that way, although the stories you tell about him are great, like the one you just told and the Pinewood Derby story is great. They're all great. By the way, there's a story about a brown recluse spider bite, which is worth the price of the book, but you'll find that out for yourselves. Has time and the experience of parenthood and marriage yourself given you a different perspective on either of those people, most especially your father?
This is a pretty heavy topic. I mean, I grew up on my mother's side of any dispute.
Right.
Very much aligned with her against, like almost literally against my father. Even though they stayed together and it was like, go to bed, Bob. We're watching TV. Like my mom was. He'd get up and storm around, and she'd just stand her ground and say, we're watching TV and whatever. It wasn't a super healthy way to create boundaries for a young kid. They should have been in a unified front, in my opinion, and I shouldn't have had to choose in any of these disputes because they were disputes between adults that I had nothing to do with. And so the biggest reevaluation in my life for either one of them was when my mother died. And I had 10 years with my father without my mother, the weight of my mother's need for me to be aligned with her,
Right.
putting a finger on the scale of how I saw my father.
Right.
And in those 10 years, I grew to really appreciate my father in ways that I would have never, ever believed possible. And also, I think my father transformed a lot in those 10 years.
That happens as we get older,
Yeah.
as you and I now know. Was your father there? I think he was, from some of the stories you tell, there to see the beginning of your success as a musician?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in good ways and bad ways. I think that my mom and dad really loved coming to see us perform early on, and especially when there started to be crowds and things like that. But my father really could not go anywhere without drinking a lot and becoming the star of the show. I bet you there are people here that my father bought pitchers of beer for at the Vic Theater or someplace. That would be his. He loved that. He loved the notoriety of it. He loved the notoriety of it when he would go to the Applebee's in Belleville and tell them all about me. And then the next time I would play in St. Louis, my dad would bring the wait staff of Applebee's. There'd be like 20 people looking at me in the dressing room after the show, like, I don't know what I'm doing here either. Right. Yeah. I'm like,
Did they bring any apps at least? I don't know.
No blooming onions, no nothing.
I didn't live it with your father, but just sitting here hearing that sounds wonderful to me.
Well, I learned to accept it. These were damaging traits as a very little person playing like Little League Baseball, for example. Yeah. My father's social anxiety, I think he was treating that with alcohol his whole life, and so he couldn't come to watch a baseball game without a cooler of beer, and this is familiar for lots of people all over America, but it would embarrass me, and he would eventually get to the point where it was embarrassing, and that was really hurtful. And so he didn't come a whole lot because my mom wouldn't let him come because she didn't like it. This is really sad.
I'm sorry.
My dad was kept very far away, and so much so that when I got sick in my sophomore year in high school with a migraine, I called for somebody to come pick me up from school, and my dad was the only one I could get a hold of, and he was at work. I sat outside for my dad to pick me up until about 5 o'clock at night, and my dad, when he finally arrived, was mad at me because he had gone to my grade school. He didn't know I had graduated. And he was waiting for me at my grade school.
Okay, that was sad.
Yeah.
Let's go back to other topics. I think
I'm fine.
I'm good. You're fine. Was there one?
So you see what's happening.
Yeah, I
here.
understand. I do. Was there? I'm not sure I know the. I think I might know the answer, but I want you to confirm it. Was there one band or one song that made you like if you had to point at like where the point with your vector of your life changed? Oh, I heard that record. I discovered that band, and then I started going down this road that has led through many other changes and decisions to here. Would it be the Ramones, as I think you suggest at one point?
Well, I think that there are many. The ones that come to mind are the Ramones. I think maybe more important than the Ramones were the Replacements, seeing the Replacements live really early.
Yeah.
Because the Ramones look like freaks. I mean, they look like you couldn't really emulate them unless you wanted to just look like a cartoon or something, you know. I didn't know where you buy jackets like that. We didn't have. But the Replacements. The point is, the Replacements look like, oh, I could probably do that, and I think that's how scenes get started all over the world, when you like have a culture of belief that just grows out of people seeing one group of kids figure this thing out, and then other kids go, that doesn't look so hard, and it's a beautiful way that it gets transmitted from one group to another, you know. But that group, and then the Minutemen, which was a similar thing. It looked doable, even though they seemed very, very great at their instruments in a way that I still aspire to. But they also were altruistic, and they actually spoke out loud about a belief system that was very much encouraging. Like, go start your own band. They were like, do this. You can do this. And I thought, I can't thank them enough. I've known Mike Watt for a number of years now, and I thank him every time I see him.
That's a privilege, right?
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty good segue into my last question before we move to theirs, which is, you're writing this book about, obviously, all the musicians that affected you, changed your world. You know, because you hear from people in very many ways, that your music, bands, solo work, collaborations, has meant a lot to a lot of people, many of whom are here. Well, I'm going to assume all of whom are here. Why would you not be here? Does that weigh on you? Because it's one thing when you're a kid and you just want to play in front of people. Another thing when you are Jeff Tweedy or Wilco, you're writing for Mavis Staples, whatever the project might be, and you know there's an expectation, a positive expectation. Mm-hmm. They want you to be just as powerful this time as they found you were on Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Mm-hmm. Do you find that to be a burden, or do you just have to put that out of your mind and write what you want to write?
This is something I think about a lot, and I think, on one hand, it means the world to me. It means that what I'm doing isn't nothing, and I really appreciate getting to know that songs I've written, records I've made, have made a difference in somebody's life to the point where they've identified it and it's like, oh, that helped. And And in a way, that makes me feel like almost like I have a congregation or something. Like there's a group of people that I feel responsible for in a way that I don't think is a burden. I think is a beautiful thing to get to do on this planet, is to get to be a part of people's lives in a way that hopefully helps. That being said, the other side of it, the side that could be perceived as a burden, anytime I start to feel that, I remember that what made the things that they love wasn't me being able to even picture that.
Right.
And be able to, and I really can't. I can't look at it directly, like, what do they want? Like, I got to give them what they want. What I think they want is for me to do what I do, and that's enough. And I have to remind myself of that.
Right. Do you feel that? Do you feel that same kind of obligation when you perform as well? I mean, like I had to look this up. James Taylor has a lyric in a song. It says, "Fortune and fame, such a curious game. Perfect strangers can call you by name. Pay good money to hear fire and rain again and again and again." And he wrote that, I found out, in 1985.
Should talk to him now.
I know. And I went to see him around that time, and he sang Fire and Rain, and he sang it just like on the record, and everybody went nuts because, it's Fire and Rain. Do you feel that same kind of obligation because people have this emotional relationship that you want to give them what they know, what they came for, to validate their feelings about your music?
I don't feel like I'm that kind of artist that even has the wherewithal to deny people that. I feel like I want people to hear Jesus, etc. if they came to hear it, and I want to be. I think it's an amazing thing to be on this planet and know that there's something you could do that would make somebody happy, and then choose not to do it.
Yeah.
I don't make that choice not to do it very often. I mean, sometimes I sometimes. Like I said before, you have to. You can't just continuously do this thing. Otherwise, then I think it cheapens it. But what was I going to try? I'm trying to say that I think art is there to help people see an authentic world. And so you can't just show them the same world over and over and over again. But that being said, I probably lean towards the side of the world that feels like it's enough to have people be free of care for 3.5 minutes in a theater, and that probably is way more important.
Yeah. I also think it might be a function of age, too, in that you just realize that is actually what you just described is far more important than, I don't know, whatever fuck you attitudes you had as a young man. At least, I think about that. I meet a lot of people who are performers who are well known in their older years, and they're so happy that they have made people happy. Time to move on to some of your questions, and I apologize because all I have is your email address, and so I may not have your name or your real name, so I apologize.
And your PIN numbers.
Yeah, I have that. Thank you for everybody who sent in your social security number as well, and your birth date, and your mother's maiden name. You might have wondered why we asked for that. Here's one. This is from, I'm going to say, Monte Beauchamp. I hope I got that right. During your formative songwriting and listening years, did you fixate on anything else outside of music, like film and poetry or writing or comics? I'm assuming you did, just because of your character, but you don't mention that so much in the book, so what was it?
I don't know if I did. I mean, I liked a lot of things that are art adjacent, music adjacent, going to see movies, comic books, art in general. But I don't think I fixated on anything other than music and books.
Yeah. Which books?
I realized that I was really not going to be great at school pretty early on, but I also realized that I did not want to feel inferior when it came to people talking about Shakespeare or Moby Dick or things like that, because that seemed really interesting to me, but I didn't feel like I had a good guide. I never really responded to a teacher or an environment that made that exciting to me. So I kind of did it on my own.
Right. Let me get the name again correct. I think it's Kate or Katie Eastham. How much music do you listen to on a weekly basis, and how has that number changed over time? And do you listen to old versus new music?
I have no way of putting a number on it. I listen to a lot of music every day, and I think I listen to a lot more new music than old music, because I don't know. I'm always kind of searching for stuff that's exciting, that's new, that feels fresh, and I've never really lost that. And now, if you told me when I was 12 years old that every Friday I could hear every single record that was coming out, I would have lost my mind. And I honor that kid. Every Friday when all the streaming services load in the new records, I spend a lot of time like scouring stuff and listening to stuff.
How do you? Is it just purely random? Whatever somebody you've heard of, somebody recommended to you. How do you find the music you listen to?
I read a lot, and also just I have kind of made a virtual record store for myself. I have figured out how to transition from going through the bins to just going through the streaming services and finding stuff. I feel like it's very much me kind of replacing an analog situation with something digital. How? You can figure it out.
Yeah.
It's okay, find a band that you like. Go down to the bottom of the page, see what other things are recommended. Go to the least recommended one of those, and then find out what's recommended alongside that. And you're going to find a band that nobody has ever heard of that's going to blow you away.
Do you have a rule about? I mean, because we were talking earlier about like the difference between buying an album, putting an album on the record player, and sitting back. You're there for the album, unless you feel like getting up and changing it. Do you have a rule about how much time you're going to give a new artist or a new album before you're like, yeah, no, life is short?
I will say that as I've gotten older, I do not beat myself up for knowing right away that I hate something.
I said,
I mean, like it's just like, I mean, you listen to so much music. There's just certain things that are going to be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Right away. It's usually sonic things for me. Like a lot of the way people make records, I don't really enjoy listening to. There's a whatever. It doesn't matter. Usually drum sounds. Drum sounds are really, really a deal breaker. We can talk about it later.
Drum sounds, a technical term, I assume, more than just...
No, the way that drums are recorded.
Oh, I see.
A lot of times are really...
Because I was going to say, if you don't like music with drums in it, you're out of luck, because most of them have drums.
You wouldn't believe the amount of music that doesn't have any drums. A lot.
Okay.
But I love drums.
Yeah.
I just don't like it when they sound like... I don't know. I don't like it when it sounds like I just walked into Guitar Center.
Nick Johnson sent in a question about something you've been public about, which is your addiction in the past and your sobriety, and asks, do you find that your past experience with drugs and alcohol influence your musical tastes to this day, if they did in the past, if they do now? And how do you connect, I'll just say it the way he says it, connect your contemporaneous music choices, I guess the ones today, to your past experiences?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any way that becoming sober changed my listening habits. the first thing that comes to mind is one of the things that happened when I got sober was I worried about things that I had written, maybe under the influence or maybe at different times in my life where I wasn't as healthy. And what I was happy to discover was that that material still felt like me. Mm-hmm. And it still felt like I didn't make this material because of the drugs. I made this material in spite of the drugs. And that made me feel really good. That made me feel like there's a part of me that was intact. And it made sense to me because the part of me that wanted to make songs started way before I had ever drank a beer, before anything had ever happened. And so I kind of feel like I should give everybody else that same, if I wouldn't like stop listening to somebody because I thought, oh, they recorded this on drugs. That would take away a lot of my record collection.
Maureen, and I'm afraid I'm not even going to attempt the rest of your last name from your email. What song has evolved with you when you liked or loved when you were young, but now like or love for different reasons? And because you mentioned one in the book, at least one, what song did you used to hate, but you've come to love?
Oh, well, recently there was an article, I wrote an op-ed that was kind of adapted from the book about ABBA. And one thing I want to make clear is I didn't just start liking ABBA last week. Okay,
you're not like jumping on the ABBA bandwagon.
No, that revelation came to me decades ago.
Right.
But I do think it's important to listen to music that you once thought you hated. Just like I think it's important to try Brussels sprouts every 7 years or so. I just think we change and things that come to you contemporaneously have a lot of baggage that they don't have when you decontextualize them and listen to them in a different time. That's a lot. So, most of the music I love came to me not as like a new record.
Right.
So, yeah.
So ABBA, there's another one. ABBA. I Am Not in Love is another song.
By 10cc. Yeah.
That
song scared me to death when I was a kid.
Why did it scare you?
Because there's whispering.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a
what is it? Big boys
whispering
don't cry.
section. Yeah.
Big boy. What's funny is like I listen
big
to
boys don't cry. Like I cry. Cry a lot.
But just to confirm, and I know the book has just come out, but you did send it to the publishers a while ago, so things could have changed. You do still hate John Bon Jovi.
I don't hate John Bon Jovi.
As a person, I'm sorry. Bon Jovi, the band.
Chick. He does a lot of great work.
Yeah.
A lot of charitable work with his wife.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely person. I've met him.
Yeah. Didn't thank him, though.
I apologized to him.
Did you?
Yeah, because I was on a TV show in Canada one time, and they said, one of the questions was, John Bon Jovi says that Steve Jobs killed music. What do you think about that? And I said, I think John Bon Jovi killed music.
Oh! Well,
they set it up.
It's the only thing you can say. I mean, it's a softball straight down the middle. You just.
What are you supposed to do? You can't.
Did he know about that, or did you have to tell him about it and then apologize for it?
This is ill-advised.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to tell him about it.
Yeah.
And then apologize. But the shade of white that his teeth are gave me a lot of confidence that he could take a punch like that.
And here's another good segue question to the final part of the evening. What song? Let me get the person. William James Little is the email address. What song breaks your heart every time you sing it, and or nearly brings you to tears? Well, it's the same thing. What song breaks your heart every time you sing it?
Well, there are a lot of songs that break my heart. I don't know which ones do it every single time. True Love Will Find You in the End is the first one that comes to mind right now by Daniel Johnston. of my own. It's really strange that on any given night, any of them, even box full of letters, can make me cry. You know, it's like, I don't know why. It just feels, it's not really the song. Sometimes it's just the experience of getting to do what I get to do overwhelms me.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me really, it's like joyous tears sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. There's a story that one of the people who wrote in told about seeing you at a venue recently, and they said that at one point there was a big moment of the concert, and you said something to the effect of, "I was born to do this," and I thought
It was during the pandemic.
Yeah, that was it. You did a pandemic concert at like an outdoor venue.
Yeah, we
socially
played
distanced.
it was like a drive-in. It was a
Right.
parking lot.
Right.
It was a parking lot. So people were in their cars. And, you know, there was a heightened sense of how much we missed this, getting to be in a room and feel the sensation of being in a room with a bunch of other beating hearts.
Yeah.
And you know, I was just feeling really appreciative of the fact that we figured out a way to do this,
Right.
even distance from each other. It wasn't the same, but it made me, you know, kind of like what I said earlier. I'm being maybe overly earnest, and I apologize. No, but it really means a lot to me to be direct and open about the fact that I think it's a beautiful thing to get to do, and I'm really grateful.
All right. Now, the plan was the final part of this evening. Jeff's going to get his guitar.
I'm going to get my guitar.
He's going to get his guitar.
Don't
His,
get too
I'm
excited.
sorry. His guitar will be brought to him. The plan was, and I can't quite see, that we were going to bring a pre-selected group. Jeff went through and picks out some songs that he thought he could play here tonight for you. If you could be brief as you explain why the song means so much to you and what it is. So we'll start with Jess Hammersmith. Are you here, Jess?
So my name is Jessie.
Hi, Jessie.
I'm from Des Plaines, and I live in Lombard. I work in healthcare, and I actually submitted 2. Do you want me to tell you which ones? Tell the story first.
I think you chose Pecan Pie was
Pecan Pie?
the one that we were ready to play.
Thank you.
So could you tell us why that one was important?
Do you want to tell the story, or do you want us to read it, or would it be easier?
If you wouldn't mind reading it, I'm worried I won't be able to finish talking.
Okay.
I mean that sincerely.
This came to our attention because it was beautiful and honest, and it's a little long, Jess's story, but Jess works in healthcare, and if I can summarize, and I hope I do you justice, Jess, and so she, in addition to the suffering that actually happened, she of course was dealing with everybody else's. She says, my pain in healthcare has been difficult to name, almost impossible to prevent, and really tricky to treat. And she talks about comedians and writers, and then, of course, music. And eventually she gets to her father, and she says, my dad finds medicine in Pecan Pie, the song by Golden Smog, and I'm so fucking grateful he's alive to talk about it with. Let's go with that one for Jess and her father.
Thank you. But fun fact, my dad's name is Joe Buck, not that Joe Buck. My dad
It must be a burden his whole life. Hi,
It is.
Yeah.
He is the biggest Cubs fan on the planet. And this
Not the
will-
Joe Buck from Midnight Cowboy?
No, not that one either. No, the one in Marengo. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I mean that sincerely. When a nurse tells you that music is medicine, I mean that so sincerely. This is creation. And thank you for bringing us all together to
Thank
church.
you, Jesse. Thank you. As I walk along and stumble, trains rumble in my head. As I breeze along and grumble, I think about you instead, and a piece of pecan pie. And you, that's all I want, just a piece of pecan pie. And all I want is you. Sometimes I get so hungry, I think about pie all day. Just a dollop of Dream Whip, and honey, I'm on my way with a piece of pecan pie. And you, that's all I want, just a piece of pecan pie. And all I want is you. Whoops. Brought the wrong pick, sorry. Just a piece of pecan pie. And you, that's all I want, just a piece of pecan pie. And all I want is you. Now don't you call me key lime, you're the apple of my eye. Don't you know I'll be fine whenever you're by my side with a piece of pecan pie. And you, that's all I want, just a piece of pecan pie. And all I want is you. And all I want is you. And all I want is you. Did anybody watch the Tweedy show? When I think of that song, I think of how our nephew, Charles, demanded that I sing that song different on many occasions because it would make him laugh uncontrollably, which was a good thing during the pandemic. So it was just a piece of fucking pie. It's the simple things, you know, it's the little things. And now every time I sing it, just to share a little bit of what the song has become,
Please.
I have to tell myself not to sing fucking pie. Which maybe I just should.
Yeah. At this point,
Thank
why
you,
not?
Jesse.
Jesse, thank you, and I hope your father's well. Great. Stephen. Speaking of fathers, Stephen, you're up. If Stephen is here.
Hey, Jeff, how are you, man?
Good, how are you?
Excellent. So being a big fan of Wilco is really part of the story here. I can't do it. I'm going to cry. Can you read what I wrote? Because I
cried a lot writing this book, so don't
all right,
worry
so
about it.
I'll go for it, man. So, like, you sent us to Iceland. We've gone to Iceland. We've been to Riviera Maya a couple times. Fantastic. Saw you at the drive-in theater. So you are we're huge fans, my wife and I. And buried my dad 18 months ago and got into the car right after putting him in the grave. And the song that came on XM, just the last words as I turned the engine on were, "Last cigarette's all you can get, turning your orbit around." And my life was orbited around at that moment. And it just felt great to hear the universe say, thank you.
Well,
So Jesus, etc.,
thank you,
obviously.
I really thank you for sharing that. I'm going to cry. But I've played Jesus, etc. so many times, I'm not going to play it. I'm just kidding. I'm just going to sit here and tune my guitar and wait for the next request. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Can you still do Smoke on the Water in the bottom string?
Yeah. Jesus, don't cry. You can rely on me, honey. You can combine anything you want. I'll stick around. You will write about the stars. Each one is a setting sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. Tuned to chords strung down your cheeks, bitter melodies turning your orbit around. Don't cry. You can rely on me, honey. You can combine anytime you want. I'll be around. You will write about the stars. Each one is a setting sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. Tuned to chords strung down your cheeks, bitter melodies turning your orbit around. Voices whine, skyscrapers are scraping together. Your voice is smoking, last cigarettes, all you can get, turning your orbit around. Our love, our love, our love is all we have. Our love is all of God's money. Everyone is a burning sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. Tuned to chords strung down your cheeks, bitter melodies turning your orbit around. Voices whine, skyscrapers are scraping together. Your voice is smoking, last cigarettes, all you can get, turning your orbit around. Last cigarettes, all you can get, turning your orbit around. Last cigarettes, all you can get, turning your orbit around. Thank you, Steve.
Amy, I'm sorry you have to follow that. But you're up.
What can I say? My song that I chose, was like a slap in the face that I needed, so like in the best way.
A slap in the face, I'm sorry.
Yes, it was just like, psh, wake up, like, hello. It helped me reflect upon like the unhealthy situations I was putting myself in, past stuff that has happened that has shaped decisions I made in life.
Mm-hmm.
It helped me choose happiness, so thank you.
Help you choose happiness. And the song, I think we said it is If I Ever Was a Child, right?
never been alone long enough to know if I ever was a child. I was tied up like a boat, unbuttoned like a coat, set free for a while. Oh, I'd jump to jolt my clumsy blood, while my white, green eyes cried like a window pane. Can my cold heart change, even out of spite? Oh, I slump behind my brain, a haunted stain, never fades. I hunt for the kind of pain I can't take, and I cry like a window pane. Can my cold heart change overnight? So I won't ever want to touch your heart too much, or hold you too tight. Oh, I slump behind my brain, a haunted stain, never fades. I hunt for the kind of pain I can't take. I never was alone long enough to know if I ever was a child.
Level?
Oh,
Bravo.
Oh.
Okay.
I've never heard that before. All right.
You are a public radio crowd. We have one more request from the audience, from one of you who sent it in, and that's Pete.
Hi there, Pete. You can call me Peter as well if you want.
My name is Pete, but you can call me Peter.
That's a little intimate.
I like it.
Thank you.
Nobody adds letters to their name.
Yeah, that's what I'm all about.
I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
So I chose "You Are Not Alone," the song you wrote for Mavis Staples. First of all, because I know you can sing it as beautifully as she can, but also just for me, in these fractured times, to say the least, it's easy to feel edges of difference from people, and I just appreciate that it softens
you.
those edges for me and turns me a little bit towards empathy. So thanks for your art. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. I think this might be the only song of my own that I mention in the book, also, because I wrote it for Mavis based on conversations we had about things like a lot of the ideas in the book about how records, songs keep us company, but also because I realized later in life how sweet it was that she didn't remind me that she's been singing this song her whole life. Basically the same idea goes throughout her entire life's work.
Well, yours too. I mean, not to hold us up any further, but when it got to that, I was like, well, that both could be another title for this book, You Are Not Alone, and it also is sort of the anthem of the book, because you return to that message over and over again as you describe all these different songs and all these different times. So, You Are Not Alone.
Thank you.
You're not alone, I'm with you, I'm lonely too. What's that song? Can't be sung by two. Broken dream, a broken heart, isolated and afraid. Open up, this is a raid. I wanna get it through to you. You're not alone. You're not alone. Every night I stand in your place. Every tear on every face tastes the same. A broken home, a broken heart, isolated and afraid. Open up, this is a raid. I wanna get it through to you. You're not alone. Open hand, an open heart. There's no need to be afraid. Open up, this is a raid. I wanna get it through to you. You're not alone. I've gotta get it through to you. You're not alone. I'm gonna get it through to you. You're not alone.
I think that's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, a word of advice and then some thank yous. The advice is when you read this book, which you will soon, find yourself a quiet room, bring whatever device you use to listen to music at good quality, and then with each song, dial it up, and then listen to the whole thing. Do not make my mistake, which is to be so eager to get to the next story, you move on. Remember, when we were kids, we didn't have a fast forward button, and we liked it. Secondly, thanks to all of you for coming out, for your support of WBEZ. We really appreciate it. Thanks to Jeff Tweedy for agreeing to start his national book tour with us at home in Chicago, for being our guy, for playing this music, and for being with us tonight. Jeff Tweedy, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It's really overwhelming to see you all here tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.